Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris. Today you will meet my 1988 Fender Custom Shop Stratocaster. This isn't a gear page.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
This page is firmly dedicated to music theory, getting and retaining fretboard knowledge, but I had a couple of requests to showcase some of the guitars that I feature on the channel. So I thought I would try it as a breath of fresh air, give people a break from so much drilling triads and scales and stuff. So we'll just see how it goes. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you think this is interesting, and I'll do the rest of these. Otherwise, we'll just get back to music theory for sure. But I wanted to start with this guitar because I've had it for a long time. This is the first Strat I ever bought, and it's got a really unique story. I'm not a guitar collector, so the guitars that I do own mean a lot to me, and they all have a very, very unique purpose in my life, and they all have very, very unique stories as well. So I thought this was interesting when I got the request. So let's get started. This guitar is a 1988 Fender Custom Shop reissue Stratocaster. It's a 57 reissue. They call this the Vintage Series. The Custom Shop started in 1987. Bill Schultz, the then CEO of Fender, put the shop together to basically sort of rekindle and recapture the magic that Fender had sort of drifted away from in the 70s and the 80s. And he wanted to return to form and sort of reissue these vintage spec guitars. So it was a very interesting time for Fender at that moment. I was working in a guitar shop in Santa Fe, New Mexico called the Candyman. Great shop. And my boss had gone off to the NAMM show in the winter of January of 1988, and at the show the Fender rep said, "Oh, we're doing this custom shop series, these vintage reissue guitars. You have to buy some." We were a Fender dealer. And he said, "Okay, well, that sounds great." They're flagship guitars. At this point, Fender had really pivoted back to this vintage thing, and we were selling tons of Mexican Strats and the cheaper stuff a lot, and so these were going to represent sort of like a flagship product. So he comes back with an order for 4 of them. They show up about 2 months later, and I'm the guy who has to unbox them and sort of hang them on the wall and price them. Now, meanwhile, I'm a big Van Halen guy at the time. I had just built this guitar a few years back, and that was my primary gigging guitar. Frankenstrat, Floyd Rose, super distortion pickup, like it's all about the whammy bar and very aggressive guitar. But anyway, Strats didn't really mean much to me. It didn't seem like I was ever going to need a Strat or even want a Strat. Well, I got these things out of the box, and I started to tune them up and get them polished up and tag them, and they were fantastic instruments. We had gotten 4 in. We had 2 rosewood board Strats and 2 maple board Strats. The rosewood boards were a 3-tone Sunburst and a Fiesta Red, and the 2 maple board Strats were this in surf green, and we had a Daphne blue one. So I get these out of the box and I hang them on the wall, and I am just stricken. I'm just stricken by these things. I'm falling madly in love. And specifically this one, because I really loved the color at the time. So I go into my boss's office and I'm like, "I have to buy this guitar. I'm in love with it. Sorry, I'm going to have to buy this one. I'm taking it off the shelf." And he's like, "No, you're not. Do not take that guitar off the shelf, and I'm not selling it to you." And I'm like, "Come on, man, these are beautiful." He's like, "That's exactly why I want them hanging on the wall, and I'm not going to sell them to us. These are for the shop. These are Fender's flagship deals. I can't sell it to you." So I sort of swallow the pill and I head off, and I sort of take it on the chin. I have a day off from the shop coming up. I go off, come back, and the guitar's gone. And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's been sold." The guys are like, "Yeah, some guy came in, paid full price, it's gone." So I thought, well, that's the end of that. About a month or 2 goes by. I have another day off, come back in the shop, and there it is with a used sticker on it. It's got a little tag that says used, and it's got a lowered price, and I'm like, ah! So I go right back to my boss's office. "Can you sell it to me now? Would you sell, please? I love this guitar." So he says, "Well, let me think about it." The guy paid full price for it, so we made a decent amount of money there. He didn't like it. He came back, traded it in on an acoustic guitar, and we pretty much roasted him then. We made a lot of money at that point too. So we've made a good amount of money on it. I can let it go for cost plus 10. Our cost, the shop's cost plus 10%. Bam, I bought it immediately. At that point, this became my primary gigging guitar. I had gigged with this guitar for years, and as soon as I got this in my paws, I didn't even take this off to sleep or shower. Like, this thing was in my hands or strapped around my neck for years. Played it in clubs, you know, 3-4 nights a week, smoky bars, you know, and back in those days, people were smoking, so this thing got a pretty brutal beating. Lots of beer spilt on it, cigarette smoke. It's all banged up, and you know, now they relic guitars to make them look like this. I really put all these miles on this thing myself, and I'm really, really proud of it. You know, these, all the neck wear and stuff is all from my hands, so it really feels like it's a part of me. You know, this is like one of those guitars that I've had for decades and that I feel like is just part of who I am. You know, this is really, this guitar specifically is just really, really dear to me. All right, and the analysis wouldn't really be complete without explaining this sticker here, this airplane. So when I was very, very young, my mother took me to see this movie called Tora Tora Tora, which was about the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. And I sort of became like a World War II fanatic. It just got me on this bend, which has sort of remained with me for my whole life. I'm very fascinated with World War II aviation, and specifically fighter planes. This fighter plane, this is a P-47 Thunderbolt. This is an American fighter plane from World War II. So I got this sticker years ago, and I was just looking for a way to combine these two things that I really thought were fantastic. Obviously, my love of music and this guitar, or guitars in general, and then this other sort of love of mine, which is this fascination with World War II aviation. So this sticker just represents me trying to like glue these two things that I love together. So, you know, that's why that's on there. You know. One thing I wanted to say about the finish, if you look at that little spot, that red spot there, if you look at that, that's actually candy apple red. You can see it's not a chip, it's more of like a wear point where my arm has been. And so when that started showing through, I called the Fender custom shop up on the phone and said, hey, what's going on? Back then they actually picked up the phone. And the guy said, I said, I have a question about my guitar. He's like, give me the serial number. So I gave him the serial number. He's like, 1988, 57, reissue in surf green, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, well, what do you want to know? And I said, well, the paint's wearing through, and I'm seeing what looks to be like candy apple red under there. He's like, that's exactly correct. And I'm like, what, tell me what's going on. Fascinating story. He said, we paint all of the guitars in the custom shop. This was back then in the old days, or maybe not all of them. He said, we paint a lot of guitars sunburst and a lot of guitars candy apple red because those are the two hardest finishes to get right. The ones that don't come out, we paint them a solid color right over the finish, right? So we paint them sunburst or we paint them candy apple red, polish them up, look at them, and then we have a guy come through and go, nope, 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 those aren't going to work. The ones that do look good, we build them and we ship them, and the ones that don't, we spray them with solid color. So interesting to know, like just a fascinating story. Apparently they did that in the 50s, and now the custom shop's doing it very, very intentionally and then relicking them so that those old finishes come through. But as you can see, this guitar, you know, all the miles I put on it, which is really great. It just makes me feel like, you know, this thing is really an extension of who I am as a musician. Okay, there she is, 1988 Fender Custom Shop 57 reissue in surf green. I love this guitar. Been on stage with me a bazillion times. I opened for Jimmy Cliff with this guitar, opened for Stevie Wonder with this guitar, did a lot of shows with this in my hands, and it's just been a dear friend of mine. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Take a moment in the comments and let me know if you'd like to see me do this type of thing for the other guitars. It's just something I thought we'd take a break and do something that's a little more entertaining. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.